The deadliest female sniper of the Second World War was a 25-year-old history student from Kyiv. By mid-1942, German countersnipers were hunting her across the ridgelines of Sevastopol. Before the year was out, she would stand in a Chicago stadium and say something that no Allied leader could ignore. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was born in 1916 in Bila Tserkva and grew up expecting a life closer to libraries than front lines. She studied history at Kyiv University and ran on the track team. When Operation Barbarossa hit in June 1941, she did not wait for an assignment. She went to a recruiting office and asked for infantry. The officers tried to steer her toward a field hospital or a signals unit, standard assignments for women who enlisted. She refused and insisted on a combat posting, reportedly telling the recruiters she already knew how to shoot. The Red Army placed her as a sniper in the 25th Rifle Division, the Chapayev formation. She was issued a Mosin Nagant, fitted with a 4-power optical sight. She was one of roughly 2,000 women who served as snipers in the Soviet military during the war. Her first sustained combat came at Odessa in the autumn of 1941. The Romanian and German forces were pressing the city from 3 sides, and the defenders fought block by block through broken streets. Sniping in those conditions meant patience more than marksmanship. A shooter who rushed a position or stayed too long in one place did not last. She learned to pick positions in shadow and rubble, to fire no more than 2 or 3 rounds from any single hide. Then she moved before the enemy could triangulate. She checked the rifle's 0 each dawn, counted cartridges by touch, and kept a strip of cloth for the scope glass. Each confirmed kill required a witness or a verifiable effect. So she worked near platoon leaders or with a spotter who could write the numbers down. By the time Odessa was evacuated in October, her recorded tally stood at roughly 187. Sevastopol followed. The terrain changed to scrub, gullies, and fortified ridgelines above the bay. Artillery and airstrikes were constant, and the front lines shifted by meters rather than blocks. The same patient work continued, but the danger from counter-snipers increased sharply. German marksmen watched for glint, repeated angles, and tracks leading to a hide. A position used twice could become a trap. The margin between a successful shot and a fatal mistake narrowed with every week. Pavlichenko adapted by rotating hides, shifting by meters between shots, and changing elevation to break any pattern. Some days she fired nothing at all to preserve a lie about her location. The discipline kept her alive, but it also built her record. By mid-1942, Soviet briefings were citing her totals to stiffen morale, and leaflets mentioned a young historian turned sniper. Her confirmed count would eventually settle at 309, including 36 enemy snipers. Each success drew more attention from the German side, and by mid-1942, counter-snipers had been assigned specifically to find her. The duels became longer and more deliberate. Some lasted hours in a single position, waiting for the other shooter to make one mistake. One engagement near the Sevastopol perimeter showed how those hours played out. She is dug into a shallow pit above the bay. A German machine gun opens up on the forward trench below her. She puts a round into the gunner, and the weapon goes silent. Within seconds, a return shot snaps past her head and throws dirt into her hair. She does not fire back. She watches for a second signature. A second round comes from a different angle on the same ridge. She marks the line along a pale bush and waits. The wind drops, and the air over the rocks steadies. She crawls 3 meters to a shadowed notch, settles back in, and scans. The countersniper exposes a sliver of glass above a stone, barely visible, but enough. She places the post low, exhales, and fires. The ridge goes quiet, and for a moment the only sound is wind across the scrub. Then mortars find her position. The first rounds bracket the slope and walk toward her hide. Shrapnel from a near miss cuts into her side and knocks her onto her back. She holds the rifle by the sling and drags herself behind a sandbagged shelf as another burst throws soil over both arms. Medics reach her by crawling and pull her down the trench on a ground sheet, timing each move between impacts. By nightfall, she is in a dugout near the beach approach, waiting for evacuation. The wound ended her frontline service. She had been wounded multiple times over the course of the 2 sieges, but this was the injury that took her off the line for good. She was evacuated from Sevastopol by sea and withdrawn from combat. The Red Army now had a sniper with 309 confirmed kills who could no longer fight. But her record had already become a signal that traveled well beyond the front. In the autumn of 1942, she was sent to North America as part of a Soviet delegation pushing for a second front. The Soviet Union had been carrying the bulk of the ground war against Germany for over a year. Moscow wanted the Western Allies to open a major front in Europe. Pavlichenko was not a diplomat. She was evidence. The trip included a visit to the White House, where Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt received her. Eleanor Roosevelt in particular took a personal interest and later invited Pavlichenko to travel with her across the country. It was an extraordinary pairing. The wife of the American president and a Soviet sniper with 309 kills, touring the United States together. In Chicago, Pavlichenko stood before a crowd and delivered the line that cut through diplomatic language. She told the audience that she was 25 years old and that she had killed 309 fascists on the front line. Then she asked how long the Americans intended to hide behind her back. The exact phrasing varies across sources, but the message was unambiguous. She was not making a request through channels. She was standing in front of American citizens and asking why her country was fighting alone.
We have paid the highest price in the defense of our homeland. We will not falter now. Victory will be ours.
The question was aimed at the audience, but it landed on every Allied government that had not yet committed to a ground war in Western Europe. The effect was immediate and ran in 2 directions. At home, she became a symbol of endurance and proof that one soldier's record could carry weight far beyond the battlefield. Abroad, she put a human face on the Soviet demand for a second front in Europe. Allied media embraced the nickname Lady Death, and her appearances generated press coverage that no diplomatic cable could have matched. Reporters followed the tour, and the image of a young Soviet woman confronting Western hesitation became difficult to ignore. The story moved from diplomatic briefings into American newspapers and radio broadcasts. In 1943, she received the Gold Star of Hero of the Soviet Union. It was one of the highest military decorations the country could award. Soviet sniper schools expanded their counter-sniper training using her field notes and combat accounts. She never returned to combat. But her war continued through instruction and public appearances. Her name carried weight whenever the Allies discussed the timing of a Western front. A rifle held ground at Sevastopol. A voice in Chicago pressed Allies toward a fight they had been postponing. Both came from the same person. For more frontline stories told at this level, subscribe and stay with the channel.